Hello and welcome to the Huddle. Liam Santamaria back with you on the afternoon of the Boomers squad being announced. The 2023 FIBA World Cup just around the corner, starting in late August into early September. And the 18-man extended squad announced today. And to debrief, to break it all apart, to look at that squad and what the team might look at like moving forward, is the legend Andrew Gaze on the show today. The five-time Olympian, the man who represented Australia at 4 of these FIBA World Cups, then called the World Championships, and the man who just quietly sits third all-time in points scored for this tournament, the FIBA World Cup. So sit back, relax. Up next, the legend Andrew Gaze. Drewy, what's happening, mate? Good to see you.
It is great to see you and exciting times. We're looking at this squad that Brian Gorge has put together, and it's impressive. It's deep, it's athletic, it has a lot of experience and a nice blend of youthful exuberance as well. So it's an exciting time.
Have you been well? Haven't seen you for a hot little minute.
No, going well. Still very much involved with at the NBL 1 level, coaching the mighty Melbourne Tigers, and coming off a very, very nice win on the weekend as well, I might add. So I'm up and about, and it's been good. It's been a good off-season, catching up and seeing a lot of the NBL players running around at the NBL 1 level. It's fantastic to see.
And I think before we crack in and talk about this squad that you just gave some adjectives about just then, I guess the thing I want to ask you first, are you emotionally ready for another new Boomers campaign?
Absolutely I am, because we've had a taste of it and we've seen what it can do and what we're capable of. Winning that bronze medal with the Boomers in the Tokyo Olympics, I think it turned those that were thinking that the usual basketball rhetoric was exactly that, just rhetoric. But now that we've got something tangible that we can hang our hat on in the form of a bronze medal at the Olympic Games, I think people are starting to believe, those within the inner sanctum, that anything is possible. And when you look at this squad, we've often spoke about winning not just a medal, but winning a gold medal. And winning a medal at the World Cup is something that we've never done before. Tick the box with the Olympics. And in many examples, it's been a little harder to win a medal at the World Cup. You've got more teams playing, and greater depth of competition. So it clearly doesn't have the same prestige as the Olympic Games, but from basketball circles, it is very, very significant if you're able to achieve a medal at the World Cup. So we're hoping that we can do that, and we've demonstrated over the past 20 years that we've been knocking on the door. And if it weren't for some, let's just say, some interesting officiating systems, officiating decisions, we might already have a medal hanging around Australian players' necks.
Yeah, a lot long-suffering Boomers fans, when you bring up the fact that we haven't cracked a medal at the World Cup, instantly go back to those experiences at the last one in 2019 and beyond further than that. But your first thoughts, you gave a little bit of a window into this moments ago, but your first thoughts when you saw the group of names announced this morning and your takeaway from the group as a whole?
Well, the thing that sticks out is there's going to be some really, really good players that miss out. And already we've seen that. No Aaron Baines in the list. And I don't see that omission as something that you put he's got the red texture through him and his international career is over. I think it's just more of an example of what he's been through over the last couple of years since Tokyo, and coming back, playing in the NBL, and getting his body and mind right for international basketball. I think that clearly the coaching staff didn't think that he was ready for this particular campaign, but I wouldn't necessarily put a complete red texture through him for the Olympics next year. So that was an interesting omission. And of course, then there's the issue of Ben Simmons, not included in the squad, but as I understand it, they've given him 3 or 4 weeks just to see how his health is and how his back recovers. And I believe that he has the opportunity in 4 weeks to be included in this squad, and how much of a difference that would make. So, but you look at some of the form of the players. You look at Dante X and what he's doing over in Europe, playing in Serbia, and you think of these young players like Dyson Daniels. What type of impact can he have in this squad? Will he actually make the team? And Thon Maker been around the edges for a little while. Not sure whether he's quite there. Will McDowell-White, what an NBL campaign. Brian Goorjian has got some very, very difficult decisions to make, but they're good problems to have because he's got just an enormous depth of talent.
So you mentioned a bunch of the names there. So for anyone who may be listening but hasn't had a look at a graphic or a list so far, essentially an 18-man squad named 10 NBA guys, 10 guys either still playing or coming off time in the NBA this season. Patty Mills, Joe Ingles, Josh Giddy, Josh Green, Jock Landale, who's doing sensational things for my Phoenix Suns.
You've got the win today, Liam. You be up and about.
Hey, mate, don't worry about us. The series doesn't begin until someone loses at home. Matisse Thybulle, of course, Dyson Daniels, who you just mentioned, Jack White, Matthew Dellavedova, and Xavier Cooks. 5 guys who just played in the NBL last season. Now, Cooks, one of those, in addition to Chris Golding, Keanu Pinder, Will McDowell-White, and Sam Froling, who was an interesting name. Big congratulations to him making this squad. And 4 guys playing elsewhere around the world. Nick Kay, been playing in Japan. Dante Exum, as you say, playing in the EuroLeague. And Duop Reith and Thon Maker, who have been playing in China. It feels like a squad that's really strong on the perimeter. And apart from a couple of key guys, Landale and Kay, who have that experience from recent campaigns, maybe not as deep or as strong or as big or imposing on the interior as maybe we've seen from recent squads. Is that fair to say?
It is. And I think that's where Ben Simmons comes into the equation. You look at where you can really make some improvements in that position. And I think that over the years, Ben's been played in multiple positions, and he's been this unique individual that he has the capacity to play the 1 or the 5, can play virtually all positions. Perimeter shooting has always been an issue, but from a defensive standpoint, he can absolutely guard 1 through 5. So if you're thinking of Ben Simmons and Ben Simmons at his best, the conversation I would be having with him is, hey, listen, we want you on this team, but we really think that 4 spot is where we can do really help us. And that doesn't mean he can't be taking it off the rim and still distributing and being a playmaker in transition, all those other great things that he does. But to have someone of him with the versatility that he has, I think that he could bring that X factor to our team. But in that spot, and I think that's why Froling gets the nod, because outstanding what he did in the NBL and the growth that he's had over the last few years. And I think it's a stretch of him actually making the team. But when you look at the next 4 years, he's one that could clearly have an impact. But you're right, in that position where there might be some question marks, but someone like Ben Simmons can solve that problem. And we haven't seen a lot of Thon Maker. He's been really intriguing for me. Clearly it didn't work out with him in the NBA. He had some problems when he was playing over in Europe and becoming an established player over there as well. But you look at his size and his versatility, he's another one that could come into the equation.
Well, we were looking back. I was looking at this squad and comparing it back to the group that got the bronze medal at the Tokyo Olympics. Now, I think it's probably going to wind up looking pretty similar. 10 of the 12 guys that were on that team are in this squad, and a lot of them are walk-up starts, right? Now, the 2 guys from that team that aren't in this squad, Aaron Baines and Nathan Sobey. You spoke about Baines in detail before. Are you surprised, given his involvement in that bronze medal winning team a couple of years ago, that Sobey isn't in this extended squad at all?
Yes and no, and I guess I'll be accused of sitting on the fence here, but I think that when you look at the group and the positionally of where he might fit in, you can see why he's not involved. But when you look at some of his performances, I think that he's had some injuries over the last couple of seasons, and his form in the NBL last year wasn't bad, but wasn't at that same level that it's been previously. So yeah, I can understand why he missed out. But the issue that I think someone like Nathan Sovey has is you look at the improvement of some of these other guys, particularly Josh Green. He was extraordinary, the improvement that he made with Dallas. Now, I know it's a different game when you're thinking of the international basketball, but the area of Josh Green that he's really picked up on throughout the course of the season has been his perimeter shooting. And you could almost say the same thing about Matisse Thybulle. He's shooting in the NBA, wasn't playing as much, but had the trade and had to deal with some other issues. But his shooting seemed to be on the rise. So with those two guys making some progress, and I think when you think of those guys that were in Tokyo, Matthew Dellavedova is going to be an interesting one. Will he actually make the team? It's when you do the numbers, I think that there are some that are suggesting, well, maybe he's on the borderline. I like his experience. He's a culture guy. Clearly, that's why he's back in the NBA right now. But that could be an interesting decision when you think of Josh Giddy and what role he might play, and Dyson Daniels, whether he's ready to step up and have a spot. That's going to put some pressure on Matty, who's been an unbelievable servant to the game in our country. And it's that I think there might be some hard decisions that they're going to have to make in regards to Matthew. Now, in my squad, I am leaning more for him to be in, but I can appreciate with some of the conversations that I've had of why he might have to miss out.
Yeah, there's going to be some really hard decisions. Now, who ends up on the hard side of that? A guy like Delly or a guy like Dyson Daniels? Which way do they lean in that regard? It's going to be fascinating. What do you think about? Obviously, Giddy comes in and he is going to have the rock. They're going to give him the rock, and he's going to do his thing. How is that going to change what we've seen in a style of play sense from this Boomers team in recent times, where it's been a lot of Joe as that secondary ball handler, a lot of Daly, a lot of Patty Mills. This is going to be a lot of Josh Giddy operating out of pick and roll and getting downhill in transition.
Well, perhaps. I think they've got to find a way to try and keep those other really positive assets and roles that they've had with guys like Joe and Patty in particular, because you don't. This shouldn't be a guillotine approach where you're just going to completely change it, because we've shown that with what Patty and Joe and Matty Dellavedova over the years have been able to do, how you incorporate these new guys in it. Now, for me, because I've known Josh so long and seen him progress as a junior, those that have just watched him in the NBA understand what he can do with the ball. His passing is off the charts. The way in which that he can find people in traffic, create for others, that's really been the shining light to his game. His shot is developing, and that's only going to get better. But throughout his junior career, he played as much off the ball as he did on the ball. And it's a part of his game with his movement off the ball, which I think has completely been ignored now because he's so great with the ball. But with these other guys in there in the international game, I think finding that balance with him, as well as what he can do with the ball, as well as and highlighting some of the stuff that he can do off the ball with his size around the box, he passing out of the low post, the way he finds people. He's done it throughout his entire junior career, and there's no reason to think that can't be part of what he can bring to the table with the Boomers as well.
It's a good call, and it's an interesting call. And I wonder whether it's been a secret to his success in the early years in the NBA, in his ability to play alongside a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah.
And feel comfortable in that situation. A lot of guys who are playmaking point guards like Josh, that might be an uncomfortable scenario to share the ball in that regard, but he looks very comfortable in that setting.
Yeah, it's in his DNA. The thing is that the international game it's a long way away from the NBA game, particularly the regular season NBA game. It's a different game with different challenges, and therefore some of the skill sets that you see in the NBA aren't always completely transferable to the international game, and vice versa. We've seen a lot of great international players that sometimes they get in the NBA game, it doesn't always translate. I think Josh's advantage is that, to me, he can do a variety of different things. He plays with a really high basketball IQ, and as such, a lot of the stuff that he does, playing alongside the guys that he has with the OKC, fit perfectly into what the Boomers, creating shots for Joe, creating shots for Paddy, being able to not have the ball in his hands all the time and still feeling like you're able to contribute and do other things. Is one of the strengths of Josh.
Hey, we spoke about a couple of the guys not in the squad. Aaron Baines, he spoke about him in detail. Ben Simmons, it's a bit of a wait and see. Nathan Sobey, who was a bronze medalist a couple of years ago. There's another big name that's not on this list and just continues to not be on these Aussie lists, and that's Mitch Creek.
Yeah.
Third in MVP voting, Drewy, 23 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists. All NBL first team in the NBL last season, and he can't, for some reason, get in this squad. What are your thoughts on that?
Mitch Creek is good enough to be in this squad. Talent-wise, he's absolutely good enough, and one that I think that he could bring a real new dimension, a different dimension to the group. And it's the elephant in the room, and I think it's only because of external issues is the only reason. It's got nothing, in my judgment, it has nothing to do with his basketball skill sets. And that's something that he's got to work through. It's an unfortunate situation that he finds himself in, but it's disappointing because he is an outstanding basketball talent, and it would be great to have him for consideration for this squad.
For sure. A couple of other names that maybe are hard luck stories. Brock Modem, again, playing really well in Japan, 18-7. Can't get a look in here. I thought maybe it was going to be interesting to see whether Dejan Vasilevic's name was here. Had some big games last season. Didn't have as consistent a year as maybe it had the year before. But this, like, the squad's got to have a sniper. Got to have a guy who can really shoot the rock. Chris Golding has been playing that role in the last couple of campaigns, and he looks to me like a strong candidate to play that role again. Tyrese Proctor, not in this squad. Luke Travers, not in this squad. And I know this one will really kind of pull at your heartstrings. Bryce Cotton, sadly, is not on this list either, big fella.
Yeah, that's right. And for me, when you look at this team, I know Dyson Daniel, he's a work in progress. He's got some time. Dante Exum's doing some great things. And when you talk about that X factor, that potential sniper, that versatile guy, Bryce Cotton, to me, in my judgment, can be that guy. And he can create his own shot. He plays well with his teammates. He's not a selfish guy. And defensively, he is certainly not a liability. He can cause some havoc. And speaking to other officials involved in Basketball Australia, certainly not Brian Gorgon, but other officials, the reality is they don't rate him on their depth chart. They have a different view about where he sits in their depth chart, and that's fine. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But to me, Bryce Cotton should be in this squad, should be a candidate. And unfortunately, because of other issues that have gone on, he's not. So he's not eligible, they will claim, but he should be eligible, and he should be in this squad, and he should be in consideration. I'm not saying he's a lock to make this team.
Yeah.
Because you look at Matisse Thybulle and what he's doing, maybe he doesn't make it, but gee whiz, would really love to have that option.
I hear you. The other part for me is I don't see any reason why there needs to be any kind of hurry or interest to replace Chris Goulding in the team in the role that he's been playing at these last couple of campaigns, because I think it flies a little under the radar how good he has been in that role. He really started to make it his own at that 2019 World Cup.
Yep.
And then 2 years ago, he really was terrific off the bench in that role on the wing.
He does. He provides a very important skill set, and that is the ability to put the ball in the hole from anywhere over half court.
Yeah.
He can come in. He doesn't shy away from the responsibility. He doesn't have that play with that nervousness or that fear of failure in the international stage. He's played his role magnificently.
Yeah.
And I think that he's still a very strong chance because of the way he plays to make this team. And I know there are some other younger guys, and that's where some of those younger guys that either are in the NBA or around the edges have probably been either haven't got in here to this stage or may actually miss out on the team because of his skill sets. And it's not always the best players that are in there. If you're picking a team with the old schoolyard and you're lining up the wall and you're having your first and second picks, Chris Goulding may not be in those top picks, but once you've got your nucleus of there and you start to get to those positions 8 through 12 and it becomes very role specific, that's where someone with his skill sets become really important.
Yeah, and that was an interesting conversation I had with Gorge on the back of the last campaign where he was saying, you guys, you put these names on the whiteboard on your shows and the like, and you say, well, of course it's this guy and of course it's that guy. And he said, well, look, I got to pick a team. And
Right.
In that last spot, last time, I had guys who could handle the ball and do this, that, and the other. What I needed was a guy who could hound it.
Yes.
94 feet, if that's what the situation called for. And that's why Nathan Sobey made that team. And so there's guys that are coming into this camp, like Keanu Pinder, what he brings as a pick and roll threat, a lob threat, and an athlete. A guy like Will McDowell-White, what he brings as a pick and roll ball handling creator and playmaker can say, hey, listen, I bring an elite ability to operate in this particular area. And you never know, it may wind up being the swing skill that they need for that final spot.
It is. And it's something that you see sometimes, maybe because we don't know all the players as well as we do the Australian play team, but you look at some of these big time international teams that they're up against, and they get really specific. And when it comes down to those 8 to 12 spots, and you're thinking, why did so-and-so not make the team? And this guy running around here, because it is about building the team, about being prepared to deal with what opponents throw at you, but also about dealing with certain circumstances of the game and what you might need to combat certain defenses or context of games, all those things. And that's not always the best overall player. It's the best overall for a certain skill set that gets someone the nod.
In terms of the bigs, Jock Landale, Nick Kay, walk-up starts, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick Kay has been one of the great surprises to me when he first went into the team. I thought, nice, yep, I'd have him. But the impact that he has had in the last World Cup and in Tokyo in particular were beyond what I thought he would be when he first came into the Boomers program and what type of international career he would have. No nonsense guy, does a lot of the blue collar work and very efficient on the offensive end. So he is one that he's got enough credits in the bank that he would have to do it ridiculously poorly in the camp that they're going to have for him not to make the team.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's such a credit to him that he's turned himself into a guy on the Boomers team at the major international tournaments that is hard to get off the floor.
Yes.
You know, like
efficiency. And let's not forget, he's had to do some heavy lifting in the qualifying as well.
Yeah, that's
Coming
true.
Back from Japan and being part of that, being that that guy that can provide that veteran experience and continue to develop the culture with the new guys coming in. He has played a very significant role.
And so then you look at the other bigs. You got Duop Reith, who was a part of that team as well. You got Thon Maker, Sam Froling, Xavier Cooks, and Jack White. Now, Jack White has kind of turned himself into a little bit more of a 4-3, a guy who operates in that small forward role as well. But is there a world, do you think, where both Jack White and Xavier Cooks make the final team?
No, I think that would be, when you think of all the other guys in the numbers game, I think that's a challenge. But who knows? Because we're making assumption of who your main 7 or 8 guys are going to be.
Yeah.
If that changes, your opinion might be different to mine. If that changes, then perhaps, and certainly with what Jack White's been able to do with his perimeter game as well, his shooting, he's a freakish athlete. And with Xavier Cooks, a bit more size, a bit more with the ball, as opposed to Jack White, who'll do a little bit more without the ball. But they're both high quality players, and both of them, you're not going to be surprised if either of them make the team. But to your question, would you be surprised if they both make the team? That would be starting to head towards that type of response based on just the numbers.
Yeah.
Numbers games.
All right. Hey, let's finish off by starting to map out a little bit about what a final 12 might look like. Now, as you say, there's water to go under the bridge. There's guys getting to camp healthy. When they head to Cairns, and Gorge and his coaching staff have the job of A, preparing the team, but B, cutting it down to a group of 12. And then it's how guys perform there as well. But let me read out a bunch of names who I think just straight up like make the team. All right. So that for me is Josh Giddy, Paddy Mills, Joe Ingles, Josh Green, Matisse Thybul, Jock Landale, Nick Kay. Those guys straight up make the team for me.
We're aligned. We're aligned.
Dante Exum is in there as well.
That's 8.
So then the other guys look, you need 2 more bigs. Landale and Kay are the only. Sorry again?
Did you say Paddy?
Oh, I said Paddy. Don't worry. Come on, mate.
Just checking.
He had 42 and 9.
I'm getting old, so I couldn't keep up the speed. I couldn't write it down.
6. So that's 8. You need 2 more bigs to bring us to 10 at least. And I think Duop Reith for me will be that guy. Now, I haven't been watching a lot of the CBA this season. I don't know if you've been tuning in.
I have seen bits and pieces.
Okay.
I got a close friend who plays in one of the teams over there. He's actually out in Australia now, come back, and he loves the Chinese guys. So I do follow him. But here's the thing. Whatever the numbers and whatever the form in that league, you've just got to put a little asterisk next to it, because it's not to the same level as a lot of other parts of the world. So even if you were watching it, and even if they were dropping 30 a game, it's still not definitive that is the form that is going to be good enough to use that as the criteria for selection in this team. But positionally and role, and Duop Reith fills a very important role. That big, a guy that can bang, that can defend, hopefully can rebound. So stereotypically, he fits that bill, which you're going to need someone to do that. And you're going to need some insurance in that area to do that. And it's one of the reasons why Sam Froling is, I think, in this squad.
Right.
Because
and who knows, maybe a guy like Keanu Pinder outplays all those guys in camp and manages to grab a spot like that.
Well, that's true. But the only thing I think with Keanu, I don't know whether he provides the same defensive grunt in that role that I'm talking about. Can bring a whole lot of other things to the table offensively, but purely for those big guys that you're going to go up against, where you see more power game. You see more low post game than you do in the NBA. You'll see with some of these teams. And how you have someone to deal with that and deal with the boards. But, you know, that'll come. They are the selections that you go through. The process is why you have a camp, because you might look and say, well, we need someone to do that. But you know what? Duop Reith is not going to give us enough in that area.
Right.
So, well, let's take the other benefits of someone like Keanu or Sam or whoever it may be, or you go smaller in that because you feel like you're going to get more in another area to compensate for what you might give up in that particular role that you're looking to play.
The other one there, I think, is one of Xavier Cooks or Jack White. I feel would slot in quite nicely in that regard. And so then there's two more spots. And for me, Chris Golding is one of those guys and should be one of those guys for all the reasons we spoke about before.
Yeah.
Which takes me and my group down to this final spot where you've got a bunch of interesting names. Now, the guy at the top of that list for me right now is probably Dyson Daniels.
Yeah.
But you've got the experience and the poise of Delhi.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe you get to the point where you say, you know what, if it's not going to be Delhi, what we actually need is a guy like Will McDowell White, whom, if one of these primary ball handlers goes down at some stage in the tournament, we can come out and handle the rock for us and initiate some offense. Yeah. So it's going to be fascinating to see how all those kind of decisions play out.
Yeah, spot on. And, you know, I think Dyson Daniels, to me, might be in a similar situation as it was for Giddy in Tokyo, maybe. Had that injury towards the latter stages of the NBA season. He's a boomer in the making. And again, it's another example of the depth that we have. But do you go with that youthfulness, or would you prefer the steady hand of someone like Matty Dellavedova or Will McDowell White? That's, you know, going to be, out of those three, who's going to be a pick? I think that comes down to the evidence that you see at the camp and how you see the other guys, and where you think your best insurance has to come from, and where your best team guy is, and all those types of things come into it. And that's where, although they're very short, intense camp periods, I think that they'd be very, very competitive for one of those spots.
You're starting to get the juices flowing, the green and gold, and looking forward to the tournament.
The juices are always flowing when it comes to the green and gold, and I'm going over there to work for FIBA. And they've put me in the same pool as Australia.
There we go.
So previously they didn't want it, but now they're allowing me to be in the same pool as the Australian games, and then doing the finals for ESPN. So I'm going to be over there. I'm going through the teams and already trying to do a little bit of research on some of these teams. And the frightening thing is, as good as we are, accidents can happen. Playing in those pool games, you got to finish in that top two.
Yep.
And realistically, you got to finish in that top two with a win that you're going to carry over.
Yep.
So it's you don't have to stretch your imagination too far to see how you can play really well and find yourself in a world of hurt.
No,
so
you're right.
It brings a lot of excitement to the games, and we're hoping that we can continue the momentum that we built with Tokyo. And when you look at this squad and you look at the athleticism, and we've always spoken about not just a medal, but a gold medal. But when you look at the experience and you look at the athleticism that brings to the table, and you think of all these components playing to their best, a lot of people think that it's just been the basketball community's rhetoric that we could actually win a gold medal. I'm actually excited that it goes beyond that. And you look at what other countries over the years, in particular a team like Spain, have done, and we are now in that conversation to be considering ourselves not just medalists but gold medalists.
What a beautiful way to wrap it up. Preach, amen, all those types of things.
Come on.
Can't wait. Looking forward to it. And always appreciate chatting to you. Great, man. Thanks heaps for jumping on and giving us some time this afternoon.
I love it. Good luck. Well done. Keep up the good work, Liam. Are you going over the World Cup?
Not going to be going over, but I will be tuning in on the regular, listening to your insights along the way.
God love you.
And to all the Huddle listeners, we're going to take a little bit of a break over the next couple of weeks as things slow down a little bit during the NBL offseason, free agency. Most of the teams have their squads together, and we gear up towards the FIBA World Cup in August and September. So thanks for tuning in, and speak to you soon.